really peed myself laughing when I read that. Never trust someone who is willingly rude to low-paid service staff. That is absolutely fact. Oh, just do as you're bloody told for once. Safi hated gulls. They always shit on her head. It's like a wolf moose. Yeah. And he's like, you murderer! Murderer! You murdered my friend! I'd have smacked him. That would have done my head right in. I was mourning his name when he sheathed himself inside me. I f***ed the sacred bull, alright? What a shame to be so angered by what you don't have that you treat what you do have like it's nothing. Nuggets of wisdom from a psychopath. Hello and welcome to Stacey's Bookish Adventures. If you like down-to-earth and honest book content, then make sure you hit subscribe because this will be the space for you. So in today's video, we are going to be doing my January 2025 wrap-up, talking about everything that I read in January. So for those of you who don't know me, which will be pretty much everybody because this is a brand new channel, my name is Stacey and I am predominantly a thriller reader. I have pretty much my whole life read thrillers, police procedurals, that type of book. But for 2025, I am determined to break into new genres. So my goal for this year is to try out as many different books as possible. I don't care what they are, I just want to read them. My reading month in January was a little bit varied and it turned out to be a bit of a difficult month for me. I tried out quite a few books and I have to say I wasn't too impressed with most of them. We'll get into my stats first, okay? I have started a reading journal for this year and I'm really into it. So that's my shelfie so far. By the way, I am no professional journaler. I am no professional scrapbooker. I struggle to hold a pencil, so this isn't going to be the most aesthetically pleasing journal that you'll see on YouTube, okay? So in January, I read 8 books in total. 6 of them were physical books, 1 of them was an ebook, 1 of them was an audiobook. That made a total of 2,610 pages read and 17 hours and 29 minutes of audiobook listened to. That's pretty decent, I thought. I had 1 DNF, which my incredible drawing of a bin is showing. Which obviously I did manage to finish all my other books, but like I said, this was a difficult month for me. So let's get into it. So the very first book that I read in January was Hey Zoey by Sara Crossan. So this book was for my Fable book club read. I do have a book club. Well, I'm attempting to do a book club on Fable. I don't have a clue how it works. I don't really have many members. But we'll learn as we go along, right? We'll learn as we go along. So if you do want to join in my book club, it is linked in my description and my bio. And yeah, just head over. It's free to do. You just read along and you can discuss the book as you go along because they have spoiler-free chapter chats, which is, and it's great. Yeah, so this was my book club read. So Hey Zoey by Sara Crossan. So this book is about a woman. She is a teacher called Dolores. One day she discovers in her garage while she's gone to put some clothes in the tumble dryer that her husband has been hiding an AI sex doll in the garage. Naturally, you know, everything just goes to shit after that. I was really excited to read this book. I was really interested in it. I thought that it was going to be a really interesting conversation about relationships with AI and all sorts, okay? Nah. None of that. It was a letdown. It was a big letdown. What the book was more to do with Dolores and her mental health and her past and piecing together the reasons why she is the way that she is. The book itself, I just didn't like the way it was written. It was all over the place. It was almost as if the author had written notes about what she wanted to write, but then just put the notes in and forgot to actually make the story. It's just all these little kind of paragraphs. And each of these paragraphs are in like a different part of her life, different time. It doesn't make any sense, most of it. I found it really difficult. Difficult to keep track of what was going on, when it was happening. It was actually hardly anything to do with the doll at all. It was a really missed opportunity because I would have really liked to have seen, you know, like I said at the start, like a exploration of a hurt woman and what becomes a relationship with an AI doll. That's what I was hoping for. The writing, like I said, was all over the place. It was really disjointed. I mean, I feel like it was deliberate because it's like being in the mind of someone dealing with a past trauma, but it didn't provide a good reader experience for me, you know. Overall, I felt like this could have been a really, really good book, but it just missed the mark. Sadly. I did do a reading vlog for this. All of my book club choices for the year I will be doing dedicated reading vlogs for. So I did do a reading vlog for this. It was originally posted on my other channel where I had started to do book vlogs before I decided to do a dedicated channel. I'll create a playlist for reading vlogs and I'll add my one from my other channel into it. So if you do want to see my full reactions to reading this book and my full thoughts and what other book club members said, then you can head over to that video after you've watched this one. Like I said, overall I was really disappointed with it. I just felt like it could have been so much more. I didn't really get any quotes from it. Other members did, and I mentioned it in my reading vlog. The only thing that I pulled from the book, because it absolutely creased me when I read it and it was really unexpected. There was a joke. What do you call a sex doll with white eyes? Full. It's absolutely stinking. Absolutely humming. What a buzzing joke. But yeah, I nearly peed myself laughing when I read that. Yes, it was 311 pages long and I ended up giving it 2 stars. So the next book that I read in January was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. My husband Craig absolutely adores Matt Haig. So I went into this book with my heart wide open, absolutely ready to fall in love with it, and I didn't like it. I'm so gutted. I feel like this is a book that you need to be in a certain frame of mind to read it, and maybe a few years ago this book would have really, really spoken to me. The mood of the book was just too, I want to say, miserable. It's not a happy book. It's not a happy book at all, and that didn't make for an enjoyable reading experience for me. Before I get into this, actually, I just want to point out, because I was meant to say this at the start of the video and I completely forgot, got excited and just jumped into the books. Take reviews and opinions with a pinch of salt. One person's opinion of something is not going to be the same as somebody else's opinion. All opinions are valid though. People's opinions are based on their life experiences, basically. My opinions on a book are based on the mood that I was in whilst reading the book, the things that were going on around me at the time of reading the book, and my past life experiences and how my past has shaped my opinions now. There's so many things that come into play when it comes to somebody's opinion. Always take a review or an opinion with a pinch of salt, and just know that maybe if a book had been read at a different point in somebody's life, they would have a completely different opinion on it, and that's cool. It's cool. For example, I might read this book in the future and realise that I actually love it, but at the moment it wasn't for me. Reading is completely subjective. It's personal for everyone, and that's what makes it brilliant. Everybody can read the same words and it could mean something completely different to them, and I love that. I absolutely love that. Jumping back into The Midnight Library. So basically the book is about a girl called Nora who she's just proper down on her luck. She thinks that life is completely unfair, that it's like nobody loves her. Everything goes wrong for her. It doesn't matter what she does. Everything goes to shit. That's how she feels. And as a result, she decides to try to take her own life. So, trigger warning. She tries to take her own life. And while she's kind of dying as such, she goes to a world which is in between worlds, and it's a library. Basically, she gets to take a different book from the shelf and is transported into an alternate reality of her own life, like an alternative version of her own life, and she gets to experience living hundreds of different types of lives. I really did enjoy that element of the book. I loved the idea of the library and taking out books and delving into a different life and being able to see what your life would have been like had you made just one tiny different decision, you know. I thought that was a really interesting concept for me. I loved it. But my issue was the time in the lives was so fleeting. You weren't in the lives long enough to get a grasp on them and to enjoy them. There were so many of them. It got really repetitive. The same sort of thing happened in each life, basically. Obviously, it's a small book. It's not a massive book. It was it's 288 pages, so it's not a long book. It would have been better kind of focusing on just a small handful of different lives and being able to delve into them a bit more. In terms of the ending to me was really predictable, right? That was always going to happen. You knew that was going to happen. Yeah, it just meant that the whole thing was really like anticlimactic. I like the message of the book. The message of the book is kind of along the lines of you're never really stuck. You know, you can always change your life. You can always make a different choice. It might not be easy, but it is, you know, you can do it. Definitely not a bad book. It's written beautifully. It just wasn't for me. But being a Matt Haig book, there's plenty of nuggets of wisdom in it, so I'll go through a couple that I came across. A person was like a city. You couldn't let a few less desirable parts put you off the whole. There may be bits you don't like, a few dodgy side streets and suburbs, but the good stuff makes it worthwhile. I like that a lot. This one was mentioned several times throughout the book, and it's never underestimate the big importance of small things. Very true. This is a big one. There are patterns to life, rhythms. It is so easy while trapped in just the one life to imagine that times of sadness or tragedy or failure or fear are a result of that particular existence, that it is a byproduct of living a certain way rather than simply living. I mean, it would have made things a lot easier if we understood there was no way of living that can immunize you against sadness, and that sadness is intrinsically part of the fabric of happiness. You can't have one without the other. Of course, they come in different degrees and quantities, but there is no life where you can be in a state of sheer happiness forever, and imagining there is just breeds more unhappiness in the life you're in. That really stood out to me. Oh yeah, never trust someone who is willingly rude to low-paid service staff. That is absolutely fact. Never trust anybody that's rude to anybody, in my opinion. It is quite a revelation to discover that the place you wanted to escape to is the exact same place you escaped from. That the prison wasn't the place, but the perspective. Nuggets of wisdom, golden nuggets of wisdom everywhere in this book. We only know what we perceive. Everything we experience is ultimately just our perception of it. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Beautiful. So, like I said, right, it's not a bad book. It's not a bad book. It just wasn't for me, and I know a lot of people love this book. It was too down in the dumps for me, you know. That is my little review page of it. I rated it 2.5 stars. The next book was my DNF. This is The Silversmith's Wife by Sophia Tobin. I don't think there's anything wrong with this book as such. I got about 90 pages into it. I just couldn't get into it. I was just finding it really difficult to read. I don't know if it's because I knew that I had other books in my TBR that I was really looking forward to get into. And so kind of ploughing through this one just didn't do it for me, you know. So yeah, I DNF'd this at about 90 odd pages, I think. So all I know is that it's a historical fiction. A silversmith has been murdered and there's lots of people who could have done it. That's the gist of what I got of it. I just didn't want to read it, basically. The next book that I read is Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. So this is the first book in the Witchlands series by Susan Dennard. I have to say I really enjoyed it, although I was confused for the entire book, basically, but I still enjoyed it. The book follows a girl called Sophia and her best friend. I have no idea how to say her name. I think it's like Isaelt. I got no idea. They're best friends. They are bound to each other somehow, like some sort of threads thing going on. Sophia is a Truthwitch, and there's not really anybody else like her. Her family have hidden away her power for her whole life, and she's had to pretend to just be a normal person her whole life, so that people didn't find out that she was a Truthwitch. So she knows if people are lying, basically. I really liked the friendship between the two girls. I found Sophia was a little bit annoying. She's that typical always does what she's not supposed to type of character, and it leaves you kind of like being like, oh, just do as you're bloody told for once. But then obviously half the book wouldn't have happened if she'd just done as she was told, and I liked the way that the book was written. It was really kind of down to earth and fun. Some of the language used in it's definitely aimed at young adults. I liked it when it says Safi hated girls, they always shit on her head. Total relatable moment for me there, because for some reason seagulls always aim their asses at me. I don't know what it is about me, but it's like they set me as I'm like their target zone. Like, I always get shit on, always. So I was like, yes, same Safi. The other one that made me giggle a little bit was within bolting distance for the swords, just in case the world suddenly went to goat tits. I've never heard that phrase before, went to goat tits, and I quite liked it. I always appreciate a new sort of phrase that I can use in my daily life. Instead of saying everything went to shit, I could say everything went to goat tits. So my issue with this book, right, like I said, I did really enjoy it. It's about Safi and Iseult and their powers, and basically having to keep Safi's power hidden while they're being hunted down by so many different people, and a blood witch who is, I loved the Blood Witch. The Blood Witch was my favourite part of the book. But I did find it extremely confusing. All of the magic system was... I could not get my head around it whatsoever. There were so many different types of witches, so many different types of magic. There were monks and just so many different types of things, and I could not keep track of it at all. I didn't have a clue. And nothing was explained at all. On top of the magic system, which was just overly complicated, there were like different lands, different places, different regions within the places. There was emperors, there was royalty, and none of it made any sense. None of it made any sense, and nothing was explained. I found myself having to keep going online and looking to see if there was a book before this one, because it was almost as if the author was just expecting me to know everything about everything she'd written. She didn't explain anything, and it was really confusing. Iseult is a Nomatsi, so she's part of the Nomatsi people, and for some reason, every single person, everyone in the world hates Nomatsis. Absolutely despises them. Like, anywhere that Iseult went, everybody would spit at her and be like, Matsi scum and this and the other. They hate her, absolutely hate her, but it is never ever explained why everybody hates them. I don't know what they've done. Why does everyone hate them? They don't tell you. I had an issue with the romance in the book. I didn't mind the romance, as in it wasn't an issue for me. I'm not really a big romance fan at all, and I don't like it when romance becomes the main part of the book, you know. That didn't happen with this, thankfully. The romance was just, you know, a little bit on the side and wasn't the main part of the story, which I could cope with. But my issue with the romance was that it was all so predictable. Like, you knew exactly what was going to happen with it, where it was going, and that made it a little bit dull then, you know. On the whole, though, I did really enjoy this book. I loved the Blood Witch, like I said, I loved him. And I thought that Iseult was the better character out of the two girls. And ultimately, I don't really understand why Safi's magic was so valuable, because it's kind of lame, isn't it? It's just like, oh, I can tell if somebody's telling the truth. Yeah, okay, that can be valuable, but then being able to tell if somebody's telling the truth doesn't mean that she has to tell the truth. I don't know, it just seems like a lame power when you've got like the Blood Witch, who can literally identify people by the smell of their blood and can hunt people down for miles and miles and miles because he can smell their blood and know their powers and stuff. That seems like a much more worthwhile power to have, in my opinion. Like I said, overall, I enjoyed it. I do want to carry on reading the series. I know there is a book for the Blood Witch, so I really want to read that one, because I just think he's a really interesting character. Quotes that I found in the book. I told you the seagull shit, told you the goat tits. Those who win wars are those who write history. I like that. That is something that we talk about. If you don't know, which you won't, because I'm new, I keep forgetting I'm new in this area of YouTube. I home educate my kids, and when we're looking at history, that is something that we always try to remember, is that you don't really know. I mean, you can have as many history reference books as you want, but all you know is what somebody has written down. You don't know if that's the truth or not. So it's always something to remember, you know. Oh, this one's kind of got the same feel as like the stuff that I liked from Matt Haig's book. She wasn't trapped inside her skin or her mistakes, and she didn't need to change who she was. Everything she needed was inside of her. That's my little review page for it. It was, how long was it? 479 pages, and I gave it 3 stars. Now then, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Don't come at me. Please don't come at me. I know people adore this book series. I did not like it. First of all, I didn't like the writing. I was really annoyed by the writing. It was so... I don't know how to explain it. Everybody recommended this book to me. So many people have told me to read this book and said that it's an amazing series. I mean, everybody does say that the second book is better, but for me, if I don't enjoy the first book, why am I going to go and read the second book? I doubt her writing will have changed, you know. I'll give you the start. I mean, most people will know this book, okay? Most people will have read this book, so it's not really spoilers, but I'll give you the start of how I was pretty much instantly not into this book. It's about Feyre. She is like a peasant girl. Her family are starving. She is a hunter. She goes out to the woods to hunt and bring back food for her family. So while she's there, she's waiting and she sees a deer. She's about to shoot the deer when this big, gigantic, massive wolf comes out of the forest and kills the deer. So she thinks, oh, idea, I'll have a bit of both, like, you know, I'll get 2 for 1 here. So she kills the wolf. In her mind, she is aware that there's a possibility that this wolf might be a fairy, because he's a bit big. He's a bit big in terms of wolf standards, you know. But she kills him anyway. She goes home, and suddenly her door breaks down, and in through the door bursts this gigantic, massive wolf moose thing. It's like a wolf moose. Yeah. And he's like, you murderer, you murdered my friend. She's like, yeah, I did. Sorry about that. And he's like, you must pay. You've broken the laws of the truce between the fairies and the humans. You've breached it, and now that means that you have to pay for it with your life. And she's like, right, okay, take it outside then. Let's do it outside, you know, make it quick and all that. And he goes, hang on, I didn't tell you how you have to pay with your life. So basically, he said the choice is either go outside and I kill you there and then, or you can come and live with me. I thought, well, that's a bit odd. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's just killed your pal and shown no remorse for it. And he's like, yeah, tidy. Right, so anyway, she goes to live with him, and it turns out he lives in a big palace, and it's all fairly typical from there on, okay? I won't go into it anymore, I won't give any spoilers or anything. But that's the start of it. And from that moment, I was just like, well, this is daft. Yeah, I was so disappointed. I really did want to be part of the crowd with this one. I really did want to like it. But I just couldn't get past the writing. The constant uses of certain phrases. For example, the shiver spiders going down her spine. The first time I read that, I was like, oh, I like that. That's quite cool. But then by the 20th time that I'd read that she had shiver spiders, I was like, oh, seriously. Everybody in this fairy realm seems to be walking around with their heads... I've had this before, right? Hooked. When I read Hooked, the head cocking situation. Everybody is constantly cocking their head in that book, and it's no different for this book. Court of Thorns and Roses. Everyone's walking around cocking their heads, but also with the addition of clicking their tongues. Every single person, every other sentence was clicking their tongues. I'd have smacked them. That would have done my head right in. Why is everyone walking around clicking their tongues? The other one was every couple of minutes it seemed like Feyre's bowels were turning watery. Like, what's that all about? Like, obviously, like, thinking about it, it just means that she was feeling a bit nervous. In my mind, her bowels turning watery just meant she was just shitting herself all the time. Proper, just having the runs. Like, nobody's batting an eyelid. This girl's here, she's just like, good diarrhea situation going on constantly. Bowels turned watery. It's like every couple of minutes. Think of different things to say. Think of different phrases. All of those like constant repetitive things. It just made it really difficult for me to enjoy the book and read it. I also didn't find it a very visual book. Like, I thought being in a fairy realm now, I was going to be picturing this stunning fairy place, but it just, I don't know, it just wasn't written like that for me to be immersed in it, you know. Feyre, she gripped my shit, if I'm honest. She did my head in. She doesn't do as she's told. She doesn't listen. And she gets herself into stupid situations where you're just like, girl, seriously? And just not a likeable character. As I mentioned, I'm not a massive romance fan, okay? I'm gonna keep trying romances because I think out there is going to be one that I enjoy. But this one, I mean, some of the romantic encounters in this book were basically sexual assault, and I can't get my head around that. Why? I can't get my head around it. I mean, if she says no, it means no. It's not sexy in the slightest if it's forced upon you after you say no. And I don't understand why people are okay with that, in my opinion. It blows my mind that it's apparently sexy. No means no. When it comes to the actual romance, I thought it was just a bit soft. It was a bit lame. It was predictable. But also, I was expecting some spice. I know everybody says the second book is spicier, but I was expecting this to be spicy a little bit. But all I got, in terms of the spice, the best that I got out of this book was, I'll read it to you. I was mourning his name when he sheathed himself inside me. I mean, there ain't nothing sexy about that, is there? He sheathed himself inside me. Yeah, surely she could have done better than that. It just was not for me. I know lots and lots of people love it. It's one of those books that has got people into reading, so I won't diss it for that. It just was not for me. I just didn't like the way it was written. I didn't like the plot. It took about 400 pages for me to actually get to a point where I was like, oh, something good is happening. I love the bad fairies. I wanted more of the bad fairies. I wasn't expecting the trials. That was an interesting development. But then the trials, it's like, oh, am I giving spoilers? I felt let down because it's like she was chased by a giant worm and stuff. Again, I just thought it could have been better. It was a letdown for me. I didn't enjoy it. I won't be reading the rest of the series. But if you enjoy it, I love that for you. I do. I genuinely do. So it was a whole 416 pages long, and I rated it 2 stars. It's definitely not the worst book I've read. So the next one that I read was Circe. I think that's how you say it. Circe by Madeline Miller. Overall, I really did enjoy this book, but I did have a love-hate relationship with it. It's really, really well written. I love the Greek mythology. I definitely want to read more books with Greek mythology element in it, but I wasn't really keen on the writing style of it. The way it's written is that it's basically like you're reading Circe's autobiography, Circe telling her story of her life. There were a lot of chapters where I was completely gripped and really, really into it, and then there were a lot of chapters where I was completely bored. With some of it, I was literally like falling asleep, and by the end of the book, I was just skimming through the pages. I think a lot of the book could have not been in there. It looks like it's a relatively small book. It is 333 pages long, but the writing is teeny tiny. So it's a longer book than you think it is. As it goes, the main character, Circe, I did really like her. I really did feel for her. She was just dealt the shit hand over and over again, and I did really feel for her. I'm not gonna lie, she did end up living my dream life on her own little island. I would be perfectly happy with that. I did feel sorry for her. Nobody was very nice to her. She was a sweet little goddess, and she didn't deserve the crap that she had to put up with. Yeah, it took me way too long to get through this book, and like I said, it is good. I didn't really get many quotes from this. I did like it when she was talking about humans, because obviously at some point she goes and mixes with humans. She was talking about the differences with people. She couldn't understand how everybody was so different, how there's so many different variations of people. It made me dizzy to realise that this was but a fraction of all the men the world had bred. How could such variation endure, such endless iteration of minds and faces? Did the earth not go mad? I also like the birth of the Minotaur. I think that was my favourite part of the book, when she had to go and help her sister give birth, and it turned out that she was giving birth to the Minotaur. Circe's like, how did this happen? How did this come about? And her sister just casually just says, I f***ed the sacred bull, alright? Like, just really casual. Yeah, I did it with the bull. what you gonna do? It made me giggle. Yeah, so I did really enjoy this book. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I'm not sure if I want to read more of this style of book. Like I said, I didn't like the autobiography feel to it, but I definitely want to read more Greek mythology types of books. I gave it 3.5 stars. Up next is Everless by Sara Holland. I say Sara when there's no, I think it's because I'm Welsh, so if there's no H, we pronounce it as Sara. Sara Holland. Excuse the state on this book. This is my eldest book. Everless. I did enjoy this book. It's a nice, easy read. It's quick and easy to read. It doesn't take much brain to read it. I mean, it's a YA book, and most YA books are like that, in fairness. I think it's kind of like why I enjoy reading them sometimes, because sometimes I read like really heavy books, and jumping onto a YA then it's kind of like a cleanser, you know. This book is really interesting. I found it really interesting though, because they live in a land where your blood is tied to money and time, basically. Some sort of magic happened a long time ago and people's blood has been tied to money and time. So ever since the age of alchemy and sorcery, hours, days and years have been extracted from blood and bound to iron coins. The rich live for centuries, the poor bleed themselves dry. It's definitely a book suited for teenagers, I would say. Like teenagers, like my Amelia, she's 12, she could definitely read this book. It read very young for me. The upside of that is that there wasn't really an annoying romance in it. What I find annoying anyway. There is romance in it, of course. You know, it's standard in these types of books, but it's not overbearing. It's not what the whole book is about. Yeah, and I don't mind that type of thing then. I found the concept of the blood money, the blood iron, really interesting. Yeah, it was quite a fascinating concept to make it tie to the amount of years that you live. So like people who were low on money or needed money would go to blood, like these blood letters, and they would bleed some of your blood, and that would lower your life expectancy, but it gave you more money. It was quite interesting. I didn't think it was a standout read or anything, but it did throw me a little bit. There were parts of it that I wasn't expecting. I genuinely thought I had the plot twist all figured out. I was like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. I know exactly what's going to happen. And I didn't. I wasn't far off, but it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. I did expect more from it, but like I said, it's definitely a book aimed for teenagers, and that might be why I didn't quite get what I was expecting from the book. There wasn't quite as much action as I was hoping for or thought that there was going to be. Very easy to read though, and I didn't find that I was bored throughout the book. It was a good one to read after Circe, which is quite a heavy read. That one was a good sort of cleanser for that book. Definitely for teenagers though. So the next book that I read was the ebook that is, I'll pop it here somewhere, You by Caroline Kepnes. Now, I was so excited to read this book because I watched the Netflix series and I really loved the Netflix series. I thought it was brilliant. Really kind of thought-provoking and creepy, you know. The book didn't quite have the same feel. It's very, very, very rare. In fact, I'm not even sure I've ever said it before, but the TV series was better than the book for me in this instance. Maybe if I'd listened to it on audiobook, I might have felt differently. But it just doesn't work very well in writing, I found. I don't know if you've seen the TV series or if you've read the book, but basically you're inside the mind of Joe. He works in a bookshop and he's a mentalist, basically. He's an absolute psycho. But he presents himself as this really nice person, and nobody around him would ever think that he's a mentalist. So he works in the bookshop and this girl comes into the bookstore, she buys a book and he instantly becomes obsessed with her. While she's paying, you know, he takes note of her name on her credit card, looks her up on social media, finds out all the places that she's going to be at, and like just randomly turns up, and it works his way into her life while simultaneously removing people from her life as well. It's a really good premise, it's a really good concept. Like I said, I loved the TV series, but the fact that the entire book was inside Joe's head, so the whole story was just his sort of rambling thoughts, and it was difficult to read, right? The guy is a psychopath and his thoughts are all over the place, and there's very little punctuation. It was like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this and this and this, and it was like there was no punctuation and was used as a full stop, basically. It was all over the place, thoughts going from one thing to the other. I found it really difficult to read. None of the characters are likeable. In fact, you're almost not bothered when people die. You do like Joe. That's the weird thing, is that obviously because you're in his head, you're seeing everything from his point of view. Nothing's trustworthy. You don't know whether any of it is real or not. But it does mean that you are cheering for Joe the entire time, which is a strange feeling, you know, when you're cheering for the psycho and you don't care that people are getting killed and stuff. In that aspect, it is well written. It's not a bad book, actually. It really isn't a bad book. It's just that I could not get to grips with the way that it was written, with it just being the inner dialogue of a psychopath permanently. There were a couple of things that stood out to me. I did giggle when he said, "What kind of an asshole says en route?" I was amused when he said, "Your tits humming because of me." I mean, I can't say my tits have ever hummed. That was a new one for me, so I was amused. There is no better boost in the present than an invitation to the future. True, true, true. And what a shame to be so angered by what you don't have that you treat what you do have like it's nothing. Nuggets of wisdom from a psychopath. I like it. I like it a lot. I mean, a lot of people will like it. A lot of people won't like it. I think it's going to be a Marmite book, but it's definitely, for me, better on screen. It might work better on audiobook than it does in writing. So I gave it a 2-star. It wasn't for me. I do actually have the next 2 books in the series, and because I've watched the TV series and I know what is coming next in the books, I think I will read them, because I'm interested to see how the next books are written and how that all plays out. The last book, I listened to it on audio. I listened to it throughout the whole of January, basically, on audio, but I do have the book. In fact, I've got 2 copies of the book. Basically, Amelia, my daughter, she wants to read it, so I had to listen to it first to make sure that it was okay for her to read. So we have got Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Look how beautiful this book is. Look at that. Look at that. This is part of the Sprayed Edges collection that you can get in the works nowadays, and it was like £5.50, something like that, I think. So beautiful. Even like the chapter pages, it's really pretty. And Amelia, at the moment, she started reading it. She's reading the hardback version that she's got, and it is stunning. This was my favourite book of the month. I really enjoyed this book, but it's a big but. Despite it being my favourite book, I only gave it 3.5 stars, and that is because, how do I put this? It seems as though the author doesn't have an original idea at all. This whole book is like a series of ideas from other books. It's great, you know, great to have inspiration from other books, but when it's almost identical to other books, that's when I've got an issue. The vast majority of this book is incredibly similar to Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and Red Queen came out first. There was also a bit of the Triwizard tournaments thrown in there as well at one point. And I've also seen a lot of people, even though I haven't read the books, a lot of people have said that there's elements of the Hunger Games in it as well. It's a difficult one to review and a difficult one to talk about. Because of that, I was annoyed by how similar it was, but at the same time, the way that it was written was different, and it was written really, like, I did really enjoy it. But yeah, the similarities between this book and the Red Queen were laughable at times. It, like, really strong. So this book is about a girl called Payden. She lives in this kingdom where there's elites who have got magic power, like superpowers basically. And then there's the mundanes who have powers, but they're less kind of impressive than the elites. And then you've got the ordinaries. There's not supposed to be any ordinaries because the asshole king has ordered that all of the ordinaries get killed. Payden is an ordinary, but she's living her life disguised as a mundane. Apparently the magical powers came about after a plague. There's princes, right? Obviously there's 2 princes. There's Prince Kit and there's Prince Kai. She accidentally robs Prince Kai. She ends up being part of these purging trials that happen every few years. Yeah, during these trials she's up against all of these elites who have got like really super special powers, and obviously she doesn't have any and she's up against it. The whole story in itself though is really good, and it was really enjoyable. I did really enjoy it. Yeah, as a whole it all worked really well, despite it being so similar to the other books. I'm not really selling it, am I? It was my favourite read of the month. I liked all of the characters. I didn't find them annoying or anything. I did actually like them. I enjoyed the trials. I thought they were really good. They were fun to read. I liked the fact that it wasn't too heavy on the romance. You know, there was romance in it, but there wasn't any spice. There was nothing more than a snog. It was okay, you know. It got absolute bonus points because it didn't end the way I thought it was going to go into at all. In fact, it was completely different to what I thought it was going to be, and I really am excited to read the next book in the series. It got bonus points for that. I really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend reading it, but try to get past the fact that it is very similar to all of the other books out there. I'm not sure what else to say about it. It's funny because it's my favourite book, but I don't have much to say about it. Maybe that just goes to show about how much of a shit month I had in terms of reading in January. February looks like it's going to be more interesting. I've got a good variety of books for February. But yeah, for January, Powerless, Lauren Roberts, that was my favourite book of the month. That is my January reading wrap up. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I read and what my thoughts on what I read was. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or what your favourite book in January was. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the books that I've read. Please don't come at me for not liking A Court of Thorns and Roses. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. That's it for now. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. I really would like to get this channel up and running properly, so please make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I shall see you in the next one.